Welcome to Disney Coast to Coast, a show celebrating and questioning one of the most beloved entertainment companies in the world through honest, passionate, and clear-eyed Disney discussions. I'm Jeff DePauli, your entertainment-obsessed host with rose-colored glasses removed. Today in the show, my pal Kyle Burbank joins me to talk all about his experience aboard the Halcyon as part of the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser, aka the Star Wars Hotel. There have been lots of reviews out there since Galactic Starcruiser took its maiden voyage last month, but a lot of what you may have heard was from invited press who experienced it for free. Regardless of whether or not a person means to, it's hard to give a fully honest review if you didn't pay for the experience. A person simply looks at things differently if they paid for it versus being comped. In Kyle's case, he fully paid for his experience himself, so what you'll be hearing from him is as honest a review as you can get. Making the decision to pay the large asking price to experience the Star Wars Galactic Starcruiser is one that most people would need to contemplate. No matter how great the experience is, there's no denying that it's a costly one. Kyle starts at the very beginning before he even gets to the hotel, followed by his experiences on the ship, his time in Batuu, and his overall thoughts about the cost. Now, listen as Kyle discusses his adventures in a galaxy far, far away.
Travel along and stamp those passports in today's Disney Trip Report.
Bam, bam, ba, ba, bam, bam, bam. Welcome back to the Galaxy, Kyle Burbank from the Halcyon Galactic Starcruiser. Oh man, we have lots to talk about, don't we?
We sure do.
We sure do. Now, I want to start this just by saying, although you work for Laughing Place, this is an experience that you paid for yourself. You were not invited to a press event. Your job did not pay for it for you. This was like actually a you vacation. And I just want to start with that because I know a lot of people have heard reviews and kind of judged it like, yeah, well, of course you didn't pay for it, but you paid for this, right?
I paid for it, and yeah, I think that's a good place to start and kind of setting the table for when we talk about worth it. You kind of have a frame of reference for where I'm coming from. I mean, my wife and I, between the two of us, come to about $50,000 a year. We live in Missouri, so our rent's like $1,000, which is cheap by some standards. We don't have a car payment, and we do travel a lot, but a lot of the travel except for this is subsidized by the site. So that's our situation. So if you can figure out whether or not for you, whether that's anywhere close to what your situation is like.
Yeah, so we will get into like the pricing and was it, quote unquote worth it and all that at the end of the episode. I really want to start with your experience though, but I wanted to start with that. And I think this will be an interesting conversation because I haven't been anywhere near the Halcyon. So anything I have to say is solely based on what I've seen online. And of course, anything you have to say is based on first person experience from money out of your pocket. So I think that's an important place to start. I'm curious, before we really get into this, I'm not even really sure the answer to this question. Where do you put yourself on a Star Wars fandom scale, like 1 to 10?
I guess probably somewhere in the middle, like a 6.
Okay.
I'm more of a casual fan. Like, obviously, I've seen all the movies. I enjoy the Disney Plus series that have come on. Never read any of the books. I know like a little bit of the highlights from it. Never watched the animated series. Marvel is my larger fandom. It's really taken over. Same thing for my wife. She grew up probably being a bigger Star Wars fan than I am, but it's kind of shifted to being more interested in the Marvel side of things. So.
All right, so you're going in as a casual Star Wars fan who is familiar with storylines but doesn't obsess over them. So keep that in mind, folks, as you're listening, because I'm sure one of the questions a lot of people have is, if I don't know everything Star Wars, which there is a lot to know, will I be confused? Will this be entertaining? So another important point there. I am curious, how much did you decide to role play as part of this experience? Because that is a big part of the experience. And not only how much did you decide to role play, but how did Disney present this to you before you got to the Halcyon? Because there is kind of homework if you really decide to dive into this.
Yeah. So I'll say we originally, when I booked it, and up until maybe a couple months before, I was just gonna wear jeans and hoodie and just be very like in the background. As it got closer, I didn't pay attention to any spoilers or anything because I'm like, I'm going in a few weeks. It's not worth spoiling it. But the more that I saw just a little bits, I'm like, okay, I kind of want to dress up now. So we did make an effort to try to piece together. We actually went to a thrift store and found a couple of pieces we thought would work in like a Star Wars-y way. So we did dress up. But as far as the homework, the only homework we had was to log into the My Disney Experience or the Play Disney app, and they'd send you some communications and stuff. You could read it all if you wanted. We basically just made sure that our reservations were there. So I didn't do a whole bunch of homework ahead of time, to be honest with you.
Okay, cool. Because I had heard like there was this aspect of like writing a whole backstory that was part of the experience. And I'm just kind of curious how
that
Disney
might be an optional
that.
Thing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely optional, but like, how does Disney present that? Is it like, if you want the full experience, this, do A, B, and C before you arrive, or?
I didn't have any of that, but let me, that might be because we were the reservation was under somebody else's primary name. So maybe she was getting communications like that, and just didn't forward them to us. But as far as I saw, there might have been more stuff in the Play Disney app that I could have done ahead of time. Or maybe there were, like, I know that when Mike C went and he had his whole character, he had already actually written something on the site about his backstory. And when he checked in, he was able to like override his name and everything. But as far as I was ahead of time, it was more just figuring out the actual real world logistics of it.
And do you have to choose a side, or light side, dark side, of what you're going to choose to follow and or be part of? Or how does that, like, is that something that you have to let them know? Or
I feel like there was something in the app when you started, but it doesn't, I don't think you're locked into it. I think it's more influenced by what you do once the story starts.
Okay. I find this all really interesting just because, of course, there is a percentage of people that like really, really want to get into it and do full on role play, like Mike Celestino, who really went into it. But then, there are people who I can remember when Star Wars Galaxy's Edge opened, and people were like, by the end of their few hours in there, they're like, if I hear Bright Sun one more time, like, I will hit somebody. And I'm like, gosh, if we can't even commit to that level of role play, perhaps the Starcruiser is not for you. But yeah, so some people really commit. Sounds like you can casually commit as well. And I'm sure there were some people that you saw that were even less involved than you.
Oh, yeah. I'd say 90-something% of people were at least somewhat dressed up. Only, smatterings of people who weren't dressed up at all. And then of that, maybe you'd have 10% who were like super into it, like full makeup and over the top, like cosplay, stuff you'd see at like Comic-Con. You had people that level of dedication. Then you had me and my friends who are somewhere in the middle.
Let me ask you this. How if you show up to a Disney park, even for like a Halloween party or something, and you're dressed so well that like guests could mistake you for a Disney princess or something, like, don't they make you wear a button that basically says like, hey, I'm not the real thing, so that there is no confusion? Did you see anything like that in Starcruiser? Because I'm sure there are some people dressed up as aliens and with green painted skin and stuff that might be confused with cast members.
That's a good point. I didn't see anyone. Well, funny, I mean, for when you go to Batuu, they give you a pin or button that says you're a Starcruiser guest. That's more to get on the shuttle and stuff, but I guess that could kind of serve that purpose. But I do feel like most of the people are probably showing up early to get into the Starcruiser, so they're not spending much time in the parks beforehand.
But I mean, even on the Starcruiser, they didn't want...
No, they introduce the crew or the cast during the opening of the story at the muster. And then also when you're communicating with the people through the Play Disney app, they actually use the photos of the people on your cruise, because obviously those are going to change. But they actually use the photo of the people. So that kind of helps you connect who's a cast member and who's a person.
Interesting. Cool. All right, let's start at the beginning. Let's start at the arrival process. I guess we already kind of started before the arrival. Now let's talk about the arrival process. One thing I'm really curious about, because I heard this at one point and I can't believe that this is true, and I'm pretty sure you're going to say, no, Jeff, you're wrong. Do you see the backside of Batuu? No, you don't.
You do, and it's really bad, Jeff. It's like, that's probably like the one thing where I'm like, really?
How do they invest and think this much about it? And like, how do they allow that to happen? I don't get that.
And it's like also right next to a cast lot. So it's a very interesting process where they're leading you to this. Because, you have to valet your car. It's all very strange. The arrival part is very strange. I'll say that.
Okay, well, first of all, I honestly thought you were going to tell me, I was completely wrong, and that wasn't, because I heard that, and I was like, it can't be true. Like, I know what it's like.
True, and it looks awful.
I know what it's like to see, Black Spire and Batuu driving into the Disneyland parking lot, and then even the backside of Cars Land driving through Anaheim. But I was like, certainly for a mega immersive experience, they're not going to let that happen, but they do let that happen. That is shocking and disappointing.
Yeah. I'd say that's probably one of the most disappointing things.
All right. Well, a very good place to start. Well, so talk about the arrival process. How does it work?
Basically, me and the rest of my party, we drove in 2 separate cars. They valet your car. They take all your baggage, and then you line up. You check in with someone. They hand you your special data bands. They call M bands, not magic bands. M bands.
Why don't they call them data bands?
I guess they originally did. Maybe because I think it's probably because I guess they were initially calling them data bands, but you have your data pad on your phone, so maybe just for confusion, there was too much data. But they call them M bands. They give you those. This is also when, speaking of data pads, my friend and I requested to borrow their data, their phones. Basically, I think they were working out some issues in the beginning where they were really giving everyone these phones. By the time we went, it was bring your own device. They didn't mention, but we asked if we could have borrow ones just because I didn't want the distraction and also better battery probably. And they were able to give those to us. And then we got in line. So you can check in as early as 1 o'clock. And I think you choose a time before you get there. So we had chosen 1 o'clock. We got there at like noon and there was already like a line. A little bit of a line. And we actually ran into Scott Trowbridge on our way in. So we got a photo op with him in front of the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, or Galactic Starcruiser.
Yeah, the Imagineer who worked on Galaxy's Edge and all that. So that's very cool. So I am curious with the data pad that they gave you, is it like just an iPhone or is it disguised?
It's an iPhone 12 mini in an OtterBox.
In an OtterBox. Okay, cool. And so now there is the option to put all of that on your personal device instead if you want.
Yeah, so it all runs through the Play Disney Parks app. So when you borrow their phones, it's just an iPhone with pretty much only, like you can't even take pictures. Like everything's disabled except for the Play Disney Parks app. So you just need to log into your account and you can run everything through that. So I actually carried around both phones while I was there.
So, okay, so you do that, you do the check-in process. Now you need to get to space, right?
Yes. So yeah, what you're arriving to is a terminal, which is why it's not like very themed or anything. And what I thought was that, first of all, you have to go through security. So they go through your bags and you have to walk through a metal detector. On any bags you brought in, they take your luggage, of course. So you don't need to open every single piece of luggage you brought. Then you go and you watch a video that explains to you, hey, this is what it's going to sound like when there's an all-ship announcement, and here's what it's going to sound like if there's an actual real-world emergency. So that's pretty important to note. It goes through the real-world. There's things in your room where if you need to exit and can't get out of your other door, there's like an escape hallway and things like that. So they go through the real-world things, and then you get into I forget exactly what it's called. Basically, you're taking the transport thing up to the ship, which, so yeah, it's an elevator.
I've heard a lot of people, describe this as it's very similar to what used to be at Epcot and the Living Seas. Have you heard this, or do you know what I'm talking about?
I kind of know what you're talking about, but yeah, it doesn't even do anything. It's not like Gringotts or anything where it shakes a little. It's just an elevator with some, little animations.
Cool. Okay, so you get to space, you get to the Halcyon, you enter. What is that moment like when the doors open? First of all, did you get, at this point, had you gotten chills yet or anything?
Not yet. Not until those doors on the transport open and you get to see, I've obviously seen a little bit of it from photos and videos, but yeah, it was pretty cool to step off. And then, we were pretty early in the line, so we immediately had a cast member there with checking our M bands and taking us to our room, giving us a tour of the thing. So it was kind of like you're still kind of walking around with wide eyes at this point as she's taking us to our cabin.
Interesting. Now, one of the things that kind of blew me away when I saw this at the last D23 Expo, which was 3 years ago at this point, we saw a model of the Halcyon, and for scale purposes, they showed the Millennium Falcon next to it, and it was like 6 times larger, if not more. Like, it was massive, right? So obviously, in the real world, it's not that large, but I'm curious, did the ship feel massive to you while you were on it?
Yes and no. Mostly no.
Okay.
You can kind of tell that it's short little floors. Just there's a few of them, but yeah, I guess you don't really get that sense that it goes very long or deep. So yeah, I did think about that when I was on the ship. Like, sometimes when you're running up and down, it feels like you're traversing a lot of ground, but then when you look at it, you're like, but the atrium is not that large from the bridge to where you go downstairs to go to more other parts of the ship. It's not that big. You've probably seen it all in the video.
Yeah, as I watch, and that's the thing, like a lot of what I want to talk to you about is I've seen photos and videos and stuff, and listen, I am admittedly like a selectively claustrophobic individual, and I hate it about myself personally, but sometimes I'll be in situations where like I just get super claustrophobic if there's no windows, and it's weird. Like sometimes it's not even the smallest of space. I don't know. It's a psychological thing, obviously, but sometimes when I was looking at photos and videos, I was like, this looks small. And the atrium doesn't look large. It doesn't look claustrophobic, but it doesn't look large. But I do want to talk to you about the room, of course, because you were in a room with 4 adults. Now, there are enough beds for that. There's like a queen bed, and then there's 2 full beds, and even a pull-out like twin bed, I believe, right?
Yeah, there's a little Murphy bed, and then there's the 2 like bunk bed things, which are actually a lot bigger than they look. If you're looking at it face on, they look small, but if you look at it from the side, like as you're approaching it, there's actually a lot of room in there. And I will also note that I didn't get the full experience of this because for whatever reason, they actually put us in an accessible room, which I believe has a wider hallway.
Like a handicap accessible room?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah, and we had a roll-in shower, like a shower with a curtain, so that and there was a seat in there, which my friend was a big fan of, sitting down while showering. So I don't think it was quite as claustrophobic as it might be. I have seen photos of other ones where, it does look a little bit more narrow. So it's hard to say whether the room was like if it would have worked for 4 of us in a normal size room, or because whatever reason they decided to move us to the accessible one. But we had plenty of room. There's also, kind of like on a cruise ship, under the bed, they had one side was kind of hollowed out so you could put your luggage under that.
Excellent. So it definitely sounds like they took some lessons from Disney Cruise Line and put it toward this. And frankly, that's what everybody's been comparing this to from the very beginning. They're like, this is a cruise experience. It's a multi-day cruise-like experience, even though you're not moving. So it's interesting. How was the room as far as like the window? Did the space window, was it convincing? Was it a little cheesy?
It's got that kind of effect on the sides where you can kind of see the distortion and stuff. So it wasn't great, but it was still fun. I like that it syncs up with the rest of the ship. Like if they're doing bridge training and you jump to hyperspace or whatever it is, it changes on your thing too. And it kind of is appropriate for the things like, so when you're going you can see that you're getting closer to Batuu and things like that.
Oh, cool.
And you can turn, the one thing I'll say, like you can put the shade down, like, and that turns off all the lights on the side for when you're going to bed. But I do wish there was an option to like just turn off the lights on the side, because those are almost brighter than the windows. So the first night when we slept, we left it all on, and the second night we left it all off. I would have liked a middle ground.
Okay, fair enough. Now, how much time did you actually spend in the room? Was it really one of those things where it's like we're sleeping and the rest of the time we're not here?
We'd pop in occasionally. Like, yeah, definitely more of spending a lot of time out. So what we did was once we realized that we're going to get the room fairly early, we're like, well, let's just show up in street clothes and we'll change once we get the room. So yeah, we did that. And then, yeah, just kind of pop in when you needed a little bit of a break. You had some downtime in your schedule, especially like after Batu and things like that. Before the story really gets going again, you have some time if you want it. But yeah, mostly it was just for sleeping. Although I will say that the D309 droid was one of my favorite parts.
Okay, yes. So this is a droid that's in every room, right? And how is D309 presented? It's on a screen, right? There's not actually like a robotic droid in the room?
No, and they make sure to tell you that it's audio only. Like, she can't look into your room. But the way it was introduced to us was when our cast member brought us to our room. She's like, oh, your droid's on here. And, oh, I see you have a message right now. So let me leave you with her. And that was kind of the in. And so, yeah, this is all AI. There's elements of her knowing your schedule and being like, cool, well, I see you're about to head to dinner, so I'll leave you to that. Don't be late. But then there was a lot of just kind of fun, like, storytelling things that you could, like, she could read you a nighttime story. You could have conversations with her a little bit, like she'd ask you about some of the stuff you saw. And, like, obviously there's not an infinite number of possibilities that you could say, but I was still impressed with how well she heard you and understood you, and her responses were mostly appropriate for that.
It's next generation Teddy Ruxpin.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts was she was telling me a story. She's like, oh, I heard this like puzzle. I couldn't make it to the end. Can I ask you? And she goes through all these steps. And I was very proud because she's like, oh, you come up to these stormtroopers and they're blah, blah, blah. And what do you do? I'm like, I use the Jedi mind trick. And then she's like, oh, these are not and then that's how you win it. And she's like, how'd you know you could do that?
That's cool. That's fun. Now, I had heard even that she kind of asks survey questions. Did you experience this at all? Because, I mean, we've all taken Disney surveys if you've gone on a Disney vacation. I've heard that she has like survey mode. Did you experience this at all?
We might not have unlocked that. We tried to hit her up a few times. It's kind of funny. We're like, that was rude. Like, we wanted to check in with her more because we were enjoying what she had to offer. And she'd be like, oh, I'm really busy right now. Bye.
Does everybody have D309 or is there like a D310, 11, 12, depending on the room?
You know what? I better make sure that that's even the correct number, but I'm pretty sure everyone has the same number.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Well, let's talk about the start of the story, because that was all checking in. That was all getting you acclimated with the space, discovering
there's also lunch when you first arrive.
Oh, like before you go to your room or after?
I mean, I guess that's up to you, but you can drop off your stuff and go straight to lunch. Lunch starts at, I think, 1 o'clock. So, and it's a lunch buffet.
I hear there's a ton of food.
There's so much food. We can talk about that separately if you want, but I will mention that, yes, before the story gets started, you can have a nice lunch.
All right. Well, let's start the story. And, obviously there is a story. There's a beginning, middle, end. And although everybody goes on different adventures, there are these points that everybody participates in. As you said, they kind of, how do they announce it? Is there lighting or a sound effect or? There's
some like onboard announcements. Like you can hear them a little bit in the hall. There's one we'll get to later that's a little bit more dramatic than that. But yeah, usually you'll hear like announcements. And of course, it's on your data pads, and D3 will remind you about them and things like that. So the muster is the first big one. That's when you're going to be introduced to everyone. And yeah, that's kind of the start of it at 4 p.m. on your first day.
Is that like part of a training as well? Like how to use the data pads and stuff, or that's all been taken care of at that point?
So no, there's actually, we didn't do this. So that's kind of why I skipped over it. But during that other part, like you can have lunch, then there are also orientations in the atrium between 1 and 4. So I think that includes more detailed tours. And I think that's also, and there's also a cruise services desk up in the atrium, but that's where you can actually go pick up a fuel rod if you are using your own device. They don't charge you for them. They just let you borrow it. And there's some other little snacks they put out there sometimes. But yeah, if you have questions about your data pad, they can probably help you there. And it also might have been part of the orientation part that we skipped.
Along with bingo and line dancing, from what I hear.
I skipped both of those as well. It's a cruise, Jeffrey.
Oh, man, too funny. All right, so that first part of the story is basically introducing you to the characters, right?
Yeah, and kind of setting up. Are we doing spoilers?
Yeah, we can do spoilers. I mean, spoiler warning. We're going into
I'm not going to go too deep into it, but
my guess is most people listening will probably never experience the Galactic Starcruiser, and frankly, I'm fine if you spoil it for me.
Fair enough. And they do communicate this to you a bit in some of the transmissions they send you before your cruise, but they're under investigation of the First Order. And so sure enough, during the captain's muster, a couple stormtroopers show up along with someone from the First Order.
Kylo Ren?
No, not yet.
Okay, not yet.
This is a guy who's going to be there with you the rest of the time. I forget his name, but he'll be messaging you because he's got questions.
All right.
About certain resistance activities on board.
Okay, so how is using the data pad? Is there a learning curve to it? Like, is this, if you can use your, cell phone, you can use the data pad pretty easily?
I'd say the part for me, like, I think using the actual data pad itself was easy. It was more knowing, like, when to engage with these things, and that would be such a role. But I think once I got started, it really kind of took off. And what I liked was I thought that maybe I'd be missing out on a lot on this experience by not wanting to do the LARPing as much. So I didn't want to go, try to talk to the real characters or do things like that. So I was sticking to kind of the more scavenger hunt stuff that they have on the data pad. And so that's what it is. So you're basically getting communications from some of the different characters, asking you questions, asking if you can do something for them. And then there's also these touch points around the ship. So you can go be like, okay, go here, tap your band, and then I need you to download this schematic or whatever. Or that's how you gain access. There are actual rooms on the ship that you can only access if you get access by doing missions. Mm-hmm. So like in theory, like there's so many people that sometimes the doors just open, but theoretically, your M-band won't let you into this room unless you get access, which is kind of cool.
That is really cool. I like that. Now, this is going to be kind of an unfair statement, but the datapad kind of sounds like a crutch. And I mean that as basically, I feel like the datapad giving you missions is a way of not having to pay a cast member to tell story.
I see what you're saying, but I disagree. I actually really appreciated that if I didn't want to do the LARPing, I could do stuff that was more my speed, this sort of like I'm saying like scavenger hunt type stuff on the datapad. Mm-hmm. And that on the first day then parlayed into real world experiences on the second day. So I felt like that was kind of a way, like if you just wanted to do the LARPing part, you could totally do that. I'm sure that they'd take you over to the machine, get you to do the stuff just the same. But I liked that it kind of eased me in and got me to the point where then I could go and do stuff. Because I just feel awkward going up to the cast member and being like, hey, how can I help? Or what can I do? And then, sometimes they don't always have something for you. So I liked that I could occupy myself, but then I didn't feel like I totally missed out because I did get to do more cool stuff on the second day.
It does sound like it covers a lot of different grounds as far as like the level of involvement you want to take part mm-hmm. in. And that's great. It sounds like there's many options for many different types of people, which I think is really, really important because let's face it, for every Uber fan there is, like their family members that they drag along are most likely not as obsessed, unless they're, folks who had a Star Wars wedding or something and they both happen to be obsessed with it. But that's cool. So what kind of missions did you go on? Did you do, is lightsaber training a mission or is that just kind of an activity?
That and bridge training are the two that are kind of baked in. But then there's a bunch of other stuff that are kind of related to those. Like you have basically what happens is once you figure out your faction, which is based on like when you're doing these missions, if you're helping the First Order, then obviously you're going to be more aligned with them. And if you're doing more resistance stuff, then you're going to be aligned with them. So then there's these secret meetings that take place on the second day. And those involve some activities or or if you're more of the Jedi path, there's some additional lightsaber training type thing that you can do. But the basic bridge training and the basic lightsaber training are pretty much everyone's going to do those if they want. Obviously, you don't have to show up, but
let's talk about those because I know that those are kind of a big deal. First of all, actually, in general, the activities, did they feel like they were geared toward a certain age group at all, or did it really feel kind of all-inclusive for anybody who wants to do it?
I'd say some of them, like, you could see where a kid would get more enjoyment out of it, but I thought they were still perfectly fun for me. You know, I'm not going to say it was the most advanced and most thrilling thing I've ever done, but I still enjoyed both of them.
Okay, let's talk about lightsaber training. What was that like?
So this is, you've probably seen the video where it has a little beam of light and you aim your lightsaber to hit that light. And then, you kind of go through, you shift through positions. Then they start adding to where the people, if you're not holding the lightsaber, the two people behind you have shields. So that gets them into it. You get to do a little something blocking the light in case the person with the lightsaber misses it. Then it gets a little faster. And then there's another round. And that's where it starts to get like a little bit repetitive. And you're like, okay, I'm good now. The other thing is because we only had 4 people and some other parties had 5. Some of us had an additional rotation, like an additional session. But yeah, overall, it was pretty fun. Kind of a workout. But that was the one that I felt could have been a little bit shorter. But, you're holding a freaking lightsaber and it's fun. Like, what do you want me to say?
How was the lightsaber like compared to other lightsabers you've
Well,
held?
I haven't done any of I haven't built one at Savi's, but it felt pretty solid. It felt nice. It made the cool noise and does the slow light up, and it's probably the ones that they sell there. So it's probably, somewhere between the super plasticky one that you make at Tomorrowland and then the high-end Savi one.
Okay, so what about bridge training? What was that like? I know less about that.
It's basic. I mean, it's video game stuff, basically. So there's 4 different positions. There's like one for shields, one for cargo, weapons, and systems.
Is this Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run?
Well, we'll get there. So the first one, the cargo thing, that was probably my favorite. That's where you're looking at this big screen and you're picking up these boxes. One person is going up and down, and one of you is actually doing the grabbing. Systems is very much like Engineer on Millennium Falcon, where it's basically a little bit more involved. So like on Millennium Falcon, you basically just need to hit the buttons that light up. This is showing you like patterns, and you have to figure out how to like replicate what's on the screen on your pads. So I thought it was a lot of fun too. And then, the weapons is firing. That's pretty straightforward. And then shields is blocking things as they come in. So you get a little bit of variety there. I was a little disappointed that there's something that happens. So this is actually really interesting. So I don't exactly know how this part works, but for our bridge training, at the end of it, we got a transmission from Chewbacca and he needed to come aboard. So we needed to do something to get Chewbacca on board. And then after we do that, he actually shows up. Now, obviously, I am like, part of me assumed, they must do this a few times. Like, I don't know how, but Chewbacca must show up. But peeking in at other things, I think there are different characters. So like Gaia, the singer, she's not there when at the muster and they say, she'll be showing up soon. So I think the first bridge training, that's when she comes in. So I don't know how many different sessions have how many different characters or if there is doubles up, but there is some variation there from what I can tell.
Cool. Did you get to do the Yoda moment at any time?
No, my friend Chris did. I didn't get that one. We might have had a better chance. So something weird happened. I think it was because they ended up moving our room. Like we had a different room assignment and then they moved us to the accessible one. And I think when they did that, something kind of broke. So we were supposed to have both bridge training and the lightsaber training on the same day. And we ended up moving lightsaber to the second day.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that. It's a bummer. All right, so did you feel like you were missing out on missions? I mean, clearly you are. This is one of those things where you do not get to do every beat of the story. But did you feel envious or like you were missing out on important things?
No, I felt like I got to do the stuff that I wanted to, with the exception of there was one that I thought was going to be more exciting, and I thought it was going to be a little bit more exclusive. And that's something I should mention on the first day, like after that muster, like it just feels busy. Like it feels like everyone's doing the same things. And after that, it really kind of, once, there's an early dinner service and there's people are going to their different sessions, then it spreads out. But there's a time where you're like, okay, everyone's doing the same thing. It kind of takes the fun out of it. But anyway, so I thought that this heist thing that I was going to do, hearing Mike talk about it, where they actually incorporated him into it, I thought that this was going to be really cool. And it kind of, there's a lot of glommers on, first of all. And yeah, I ended up having to leave and go to do something else anyway, but that was a little disappointing. And that was the one time where I was like, oh, I kind of wish that I was a little bit more active, so I wouldn't at least know what the hell was happening at that point.
Yeah.
But other than that, the time, it kind of wears out its welcome for me. Like when I would be with the characters, because obviously they need to get to a certain point. So you'd have people, they'd be like, do you guys have any ideas? And someone would throw an idea, and then you could see them think about why that doesn't work. And it's like, then you're just kind of standing there like, okay, well, are we going to do something else? Or so I'll give you a specific example. We, as part of our secret meeting on day 2, similar to Chewbacca, Rey comes aboard, and the captain held me and our friends behind along with a couple other people. And then we actually got to go to where you go to Batuu, that transport hallway, and bring Rey in and get to hide her and stuff like that. So it was kind of cool to see her arrive. But then, like I said, after like 20 minutes, you're like, okay, are we actually going to do anything? Like, this isn't fun anymore. So if you're really into it, then maybe you can make it work. But especially when we left to go get Rey, there's like 5 people. And by the time she's there's like 20, because they're not going to like shoo people away.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of the missions are like, hey, go make sure there's no stormtroopers out there. So I feel like if you're really playing and interacting with the characters, there's going to be a lot of that. Make a distraction. Go see if this person's over there. And so I feel like that'll get old. That's why I appreciate that you could kind of go at your own pace and do the datapad thing.
Alrighty, let's talk about some food and drink. We're coming up on dinner on night 1, which I know is kind of an event in and of itself. But what was the food like overall? I mean, there's a plethora of it, I hear, but anything in particular that was amazing?
I'd say overall, like, I'm a picky eater, so I appreciated that the food was way more approachable than I feared. It's also served family style, so if you like anything, dinner is, I should say. Obviously lunch is buffet style, so you can get whatever you want over and over. But it's family style, so if you want anything more, they'll bring it out. You can even order off the kids menu, which is crucial because we saw that they had something called waffle fries, and we're like, who doesn't want some waffle fries? And we're just picturing, Chick-fil-A waffle fries. No. This was shredded potato baked into like a waffle. Like, not waffle flavoring, but yeah, it was awesome.
That's so funny that you should say that, because I was just watching somebody like do this on Food Network just a few days ago. I was like, oh, I gotta try that.
It was awesome, and it tasted like a latke.
That's really cool. Excellent.
But the food overall, I'll say, it becomes clear that they're cooking for a lot of people in a short amount of time. So nothing was really great. Everything, in my opinion, was just good, or some of the stuff was lesser. I thought some things were like really good, but I didn't think anything was great. So it's not really that elevated fine dining experience because, like I said, there's only 2 dinner services and they're cooking the same thing for every table. So, its quality is going to slip a little bit, but I didn't think anything was overly bad. But I can imagine people who are more foodies might be disappointed.
That's interesting because I do feel like, as with many things these days, I feel like the food looks beautiful in a lot of cases.
Yeah, that's definitely a theme.
Yeah, the theme of Instagram food, right? Like, that's a little disappointing to hear, especially considering the price point. I would actually expect really good food. So that's a little disappointing.
But again, I do like that if we wanted more of the stuff that we liked, we could have gotten it. It'd probably be a little bit fresher at that point, too, because they're probably cooking it more to order. I think my favorite things from the first night's food, they have like a sesame chicken sort of thing called Tip Yip, of course. That was pretty good. I also liked both of the banthas that we had on night 1 and night 2 were good. That's just beef. And yeah, some of the other stuff, like I said, the kids menu was surprisingly good.
Awesome. So dinner night 1, is that when you have the singer and the entertainment?
Yeah, and so, I knew that was going to be part of it, and I enjoyed her performance, but I guess what I didn't realize is that there would be, like, story elements other than that. So, even just, like, little things. You could feel, like, tension. Like when stormtroopers come in and look around, you can see like one of the characters will get up and go and greet them. And so like you're watching all of this stuff during the performance, during your dinner and all of that. And so that kind of really heightened it for me.
Excellent. So after dinner, like I assume at this point it's kind of like do what you want, no more missions for the day, or is that incorrect?
I think there might be some data pad stuff, but as I found out, we were surprised to learn, the atrium is open until like 1 a.m. on the first night, and so is Sublight. So, you know, if you want to get pictures, like it does clear out because people want to go up, get to bed early and get up for Batuu the next day. So we stayed up a bit. They have additional food you can get at Sublight. There's food that you can order in the atrium, and that's free. The only thing that costs money is if you get an alcoholic beverage, or they have a couple of specialty beverages that are non-alcoholic but are still on the pay menu. So yeah, we didn't stay up too late, but we definitely took advantage of the shop is open until 11, so we check all that out. You know, we played some Holo Sabacc at the Sublight Lounge, and then of course my friend's a professional photographer, so she took tons of photos all around the ship while it was pretty empty.
All right, so day 2, you go to Batuu. How early does that start for you? Is that...
I want to say like 8:30 or so is the first one.
Wow.
We didn't get on the very first one. But they start breakfast at 7, so we got up around then, got something to eat, and that's also like a buffet thing.
Mickey waffles?
No, they had waffles, but they weren't Mickey. What were they?
Darth Vader waffles.
No, they weren't Darth Vader either.
That'd be so
I have pictures of them somewhere. I think they actually might have the Chandrilla logo. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to check my photos. But yeah, so we grabbed some breakfast. They also have grab and go upstairs at Sublight, which it looked like, you know, like a little package thing. And then, yeah, you get in line and you go to Batuu. You're normally supposed to get a pin. And we had seen pictures of it. And so when they handed us a button, we're like, the hell is this?
Yeah, a button is not a pin. People make this mistake all the time. There's a huge difference between a button and a pin. A button is something you're handed for free when you enter the main gate on a certain, you know, on a celebration. A pin is a collectible item you pay for usually. So that's a big difference.
So we were definitely disappointed. We did inquire later and they said, you know, same thing. Of course, it's the shipping issues. They said they were going to send them to us. I don't know if that's the case. I would hope that that's the case for everyone.
Yeah.
They didn't obviously talk about it at the time. They're not going to hand it to you, be like, don't worry, we're going to send you something else. But us in the know, we're like, hey, what's the deal? And so they said they're going to ship them to us. I will let you know if that happens.
Yeah, it's just annoying, the shipping situation. Like, you know, it's obviously a huge problem, even more so than just annoying. But my gosh, it's gone on for way too long at this point. It's insane.
Yeah. Well, we knew that there were issues because we were doing the races later that week. And that's about the time we got the email that's like, oh, your medals might not be here.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So you head to Batuu. You have that transport. I got to ask, how claustrophobic is this transport? Because this freaks me out more than anything. There are no windows on that thing.
It's pretty tight, to be honest. Yeah, it's like, I think there are...
You don't even understand. Like, my body is literally having a reaction just hearing you say that. Oh.
I think there are 8 seats, and then they let a few people stand, so I think maybe 12 people at a time.
Oh, no. All right.
It's nicely themed. It looks nice.
How long is the ride?
Maybe 5 minutes. It's a little longer than you think it should be. But, I mean, I guess I don't know where everything is.
They're just driving in circles to make it a longer experience for you. I'd be like, listen, I have issues. Can I get a golf cart transport, please? Like, oh my.
I mean, I do wonder if they're going to make exceptions for that and stuff. Because, yeah, it's not the most enjoyable. I didn't think it was terrible. Like, hey, finally, people that complain that there's no motion on the ship itself to simulate being in space. Well, here you go. It's all bumpy for you.
All right. That makes me a little unhappy to hear that it's claustrophobic.
But hey, there's a nice cold Dasani waiting for you when you get off. Complimentary Dasani. You only paid thousands of dollars for it.
Excellent. Now, I got to ask, do you need to go to Batuu? Like, is this a requirement? Because I'm sure there are people, and I know that there are like special missions for you to do when you're there and stuff, but like, part of me is like, I paid all this money to be on this Halcyon, of which I have a limited time to be on. I kind of just want to stay here.
There's not a lot happen. You can. They have lunch buffet. So if you don't go to Batuu and use your lunch credit there, you can totally eat on the ship. I will say I don't think there's a lot to do. I don't think the story really starts again until the afternoon. But of course, you can do stuff on the ship as far as your data pad. But if you want to just go to Batuu, use your 2 lightning lanes, and go back, totally cool. You could totally do that.
Because you get a lightning lane for each of the rides. Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run and Rise of the Resistance. And in the
event that Rise of the Resistance is down, or either one of them is down, I think there's alternative ways to do your missions, if that's what you're concerned about.
Did you go to... Oh, wait a sec. There are missions on the rides?
There are missions that are like, hey, did you get the coaxium? And you're like, yes. He's like, cool. So that means that you rode, Millennium Falcon.
Yeah. All right. Did you leave Galaxy's Edge at all, or did you stay there and head back?
That was our only day at a Disney park, aside from the races. So we ventured very quickly over to the Starbucks just so we could walk around and see how the waits were, and it was pretty busy. So then we headed back. I tried a Ronto wrap with my meal credit before we left, and went back to the ship around 11:30 or noon.
All right. So, I mean... You could go and they give you meal credits to use in Batuu.
And the meal credit actually works through mobile ordering. So, I mean, you don't have to mobile order, but we used it through mobile ordering. And so you can do it for Woody's or something.
Oh, okay. Interesting. So you can do that and then you can go buffet as well.
Yeah. There's no shortage of food on this thing.
All right. Lots of food and space. All right. Cool. So you head back onto the ship after that. Were there any really cool missions that you did that we should talk about?
My wife actually had a ton of fun with these missions. She did a really long one that didn't make her, but it's I really compare it to scavenger hunt stuff. It'll be like, go find this. And then you use your thing to decipher a code, or you scan the crates, that sort of a thing, and find the thing.
Oh, you mean the stuff that they promised us was going to be part of Galaxy's Edge?
Yeah.
Yeah, that stuff. All right. Cool.
Yeah, so you can do that, and it's fun. And then also, the more you do of that, that kind of influences some of the stuff that you'll end up doing when you get back. It'll be okay, cool, meet me at 4:30 for the, or you'll see a little thing once you unlock an in-person mission. It'll be added to your calendar. It'll add to your itinerary so you know what time that is. So doing a lot of the stuff with hacking around Batuu, that kind of puts you in with Wraith Cole, who's Gaia's manager, and it kind of aligns you with the Scoundrel path. So then, there's the Resistance, there's the First Order, and then there's Scoundrel, which is mostly good, mostly Resistance, but more of just a tinkerer kind of, villainy.
I'd totally be a Scoundrel.
That's what I ended up doing. That's how I got invited to the heist sort of a thing, was because I was doing a lot of stuff with digitally with Wraith.
Nice. So how much time would you say you spent off of the Halcyon?
I guess we were probably gone for about 3 hours or so.
All right. That's a chunk.
I mean, you have the lightning lanes went really quickly for us. So
cool. All right. So you did that. You go back to the ship. What is happening that afternoon story-wise? Is this when we get the Kylo Ren Rey moment?
That's the finale.
Okay. We'll talk about that later then. So what's going on during the day when you get back to the ship? Line dancing and bingo.
I think that was the first day. I completely missed it. I wonder if maybe that was happening while we were having dinner, because we had the late service.
Maybe it was
dinner,
cut.
Which, by the way,
because it
personally,
was made fun of.
It's a ship. It makes sense. They teach you the dance to do with Gaia, I think.
All right.
You don't have to do it.
I know.
You can do whatever you want. I completely missed it. So
listen, it was funny videos. Anybody who doesn't know, they have bingo and line dancing like you'd find in a retirement center.
There's all sorts of little things like that. We played a newlywed game thing that they invited us to play in the middle of the atrium.
It's hilarious.
There's little silly things. But anyway, late service for dinner. The first service is 5 something, and we're not that old, so I'm glad we went with the 8 o'clock one. But anyway, so there's kind of some downtime. There's more to explore on the ship. This is when I discovered a room of the ship that I didn't have any idea was there, and I got access to it. And this is also one of my favorite moments that I'll share. So this is the cargo room that I got access to. And I get in there, and there's these two kids, one of them who was aligned with the First Order and the other one who was aligned with the Resistance. And they're kind of like, not arguing, but like doing that fake arguing thing. It's like, no, you can't be in here. And the other one's trying to trick him, like, here, I'll show you how to get access to here. And, just trying to lure him out so that he'll get locked out. Mm-hmm. And it was just so fun to see how into it they were and how they were completely away from everyone else and still doing their own little story. So that was a ton of fun. But also when I went in, like I tap in and I open the thing, he looks at, because he's telling the kid that he needs access. And he looks at me, he's like, you have access? I was like, yeah. He's like, nice. So I felt really good about myself because this little 10-year-old told me I did a good job.
That's awesome. I mean, honestly, it must be like a fantasy come true for a certain age. Like probably 8, 9, 10 years old where like you can fully comprehend what's going on, yet still you're at an age where like make-believe is real. Like it must be kind of mind-blowing for a very specific age range, I would assume.
Yeah, I would think so. It seemed like all the kids were like really into it. And of course, they're the ones that are following the characters more. Like there are definitely some adults that are following the characters everywhere, but it felt like the kids were the most into it, which honestly, even though I don't have kids, that's what you want.
Yeah, cool. Was there anything special or specific about dinner at night too that we need to talk about, or was it just more food?
So the theme here is different. There's no performance. This is Taste of the Galaxy. So each course comes out all at once, they make a big show of it, and the culinary people come out and speak. And this was actually a really special moment for us because my wife realized, the first person comes out and they do the little speech and she's looking around. She sees him and realizes she knows him. She went to college with him and they did college program together at Walt Disney World.
Oh, wow.
So then once our server came over, she asked if she could talk to him. He's the sous chef there. And so they got to reconnect and hang out for a few minutes. So that was really special. But yeah, so Taste of the Galaxy, each course is themed to a different planet. So that's kind of fun. They change the lighting every time. But the coolest part of this was because we had that late service, as we're paying our check, that's when the lights go off and then they come back on.
When you
and
say
they're
paying your
flashing
check,
red.
though, wait a sec, go back. Paying your check meaning what?
My wife bought a drink.
Okay, cool. Most of the time there's no check, right?
Right. Most of the time there's no check.
Okay, cool. Sorry, continue.
Sorry, I guess that's a good point. But yes, as we're finishing, as we're getting ready to leave, the lights go off. They start flashing red and a siren's going off. And that's when you go upstairs for the finale. So it was actually really cool to be like finishing up dinner and have this happen. And then we go upstairs and the show starts. And I hadn't watched any video of it. Like I knew a little bit. Like obviously I knew it was going to be Rey and Kylo because they have them in the promo photos. But I know that there's the sloppy lightsaber thing. If you're just watching the show, it's not as obvious as people want to make it sound like it is. Like it's not great. And I think they're working to fix it. But
that's what I've heard. Yeah, I've heard that is not the final product, which is honestly what I've heard in general. What I think you might have gone you went end of March, right?
Yeah.
I was talking to somebody who actually works in a space where they build props and stuff for the Halcyon, and like it ain't ready. Like it's not all done yet. So like just little things, nothing that was massive, but just like in-world props that they're like, we're still working on them. They're probably not going to be in there till April or May. So
interesting.
So yeah. And from what I hear, that lightsaber thing is being worked on. And it seems like it might have been, and I don't know this for certain, but it just might not have ever been finished. And so we're just waiting for the final product.
If I didn't know about it, I wouldn't have known about it, I think is what it comes down to. But I also didn't realize that there were other special effects during that show. And I thought all of those were pretty good, especially the one where the force pull. Mm-hmm. It looked so awesome, especially not knowing that it was coming.
Yeah.
Like maybe I was just in a really good spot. But yeah, it was so much fun. I can't tell you. This is the when I got most into it. This finale totally worked for me.
How long is it?
I mean, I didn't time it. Maybe 15 minutes.
Okay.
But, it involves all the crew. There are legit surprises, some really cool effects, in my opinion. And then it's kind of over after that. But yeah, it all worked for me from the point of being at dinner, having that alarm go off, go upstairs, and then have this show that was just like, felt very, very much like a community. Like it really feels like you're part of something.
Was this the only time you see Kylo Ren, or do you see him at another point?
That's a good question. Maybe the people who are doing the First Order path see him come aboard.
Okay.
But for me and my storyline and what I was doing, that was the first time I saw him. Obviously, I'd seen Rey earlier. We helped bring her on board. Mm-hmm. But this is the first time I saw Kylo.
Now, you said it was like a communal experience, which I love. And you know, it is weird how we as like human beings connect so quickly when we're put in situations where just like we can't get away from each other, you know. And you see it on, this is a terrible example, but like reality TV shows where people are secluded and you're like, how are you lifelong friends after 3 days into something? I'm curious, I know you went with friends, but did you meet anybody on the Halcyon that you're like, God, we're lifers, you know?
We didn't. I mean, we could have probably talked to people more. We met a couple people in line, or because there's 4 of us, we had our own table at dinner. I don't know if we were also at a booth. So maybe if you were at a table, you'd talk to people because you had the same table both nights. So just like a cruise, if you were near people and talked with them, you'd see them again the next night. So I could see that happening in that case.
Okay.
And also backing up to dinner, I forgot, like I said, there was that tension in the first night. There's even more so, like there's an exchange between the First Order guy and the captain during dinner that was interesting and poignant, and you could draw a lot of comparisons to politics, just as you can in the final speech that happens in the finale. Like, yeah, I know some of you worked with the First Order, but maybe you had your reasons, and like, you know, there's it's really interesting the sort of parallels you could draw. But yeah, there's a big speech that it's not like you lock up the First Order traitors at the end or something. You all come together as a community. So I thought that was kind of interesting because, of course, you have to do that. I think that's probably the biggest challenge of something like this, or if it would have been in Galaxy's Edge, is like if you have these 2 factions, you know, you have to make it fun without taking it too far. And so I think that kind of goes a long way in diffusing those sort of situations.
All right, so it sounds that's pretty much the experience. Obviously, there's a ton more to it, but that's kind of the highlights. Sounds like you had a great time, but let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that is the cost of this experience. Lay it out for us, and is it worth it, essentially?
Okay, so first of all, for our party of 4, and this was a weekday cruise, so it came to $6,600 total. That includes your food, that includes tickets to Batuu, that includes your M-band and all that stuff. Doesn't include, like I said, the alcoholic beverages or gratuity. And that's something that we weren't sure about. Like, we didn't know if we were supposed to, or if we, you know, should tip the waiter. We left $100 because we thought he was really good. But that was part that was kind of unclear as far as how you're supposed to take care of. Like, I've never been on a cruise, so I didn't even have that frame of reference.
Interesting. I know in a cruise ship, I remember when I went as a kid, there was an envelope left in your room at night because you'd have the same waiters every night, and you left a tip in there. I feel that's interesting. I don't know.
We were wondering about that. That's what my friends mentioned was the envelope, and we didn't get anything like that. So like I said, I happened to have some cash on me, so we left the waiter some cash because he was really good. Like when we showed up the second night to dinner, he already had my friend's Coke sitting there waiting for him because he kept ordering them. But yeah, so $6,600, we split that 4 ways. And keep in mind that that's the reason that it's higher per person. Like normally you can have a room and that's the room rate, and you can add people and it just makes it smaller. But because it's that all-inclusive sort of a thing, the price does go up with every person that you add on to it. So even though it is cheaper per person, it's not as divisible as you would hope. And then also it was more expensive if you're doing a weekend one, it seems like.
Okay, fair enough. So, I mean, you did it. Was it worth it?
So I think my wife put it best. She said, like, looking at everything we got and everything we did, it's hard to justify every cost and be like, oh yeah, that totally makes sense money-wise. At the same time, we don't regret spending it. Like, we both really enjoyed the experience. And so, yeah, I'm not like, I can't believe I wasted my money on that. But yeah, of course, if you're thinking about, okay, well, we spent $3,000 on that. What could we get for $3,000? Well, we could probably fly like business class to Paris, and like there's so many other things that you could spend that money. So that's kind of what it's all about, is like thinking about whether or not you think that you would get enough out of the experience. Like, we're fortunate enough that $3,000 is a lot of money for us. Like, that's, like a month and a half of salary or whatever, but it's not going to break us because of how we spend our money elsewhere. So if you prioritize it and think it's something you want to do, then I think you can totally have a good time with it. But worth is going to be up to you.
Would you do it again? And if so, how soon? And would you do it again if it was the same story?
I might do it if it was the same story, if enough time. I don't want to do it right away, but it definitely left us wanting more. That's another thing I should mention, is that the 2 days really felt perfect.
Okay.
And we were a little bummed after we left. And I think that's kind of what you want, right?
Yeah, it's to me, it sounds like a D23 Expo sort of experience where at the end of it, you're like, oh, like, the convention depression is a real thing. I'm sure Halcyon depression becomes a thing for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But, I'd be open to doing it again. I liked doing it with the other people that could kind of help push me to do more stuff, which it turns out I didn't actually need that as much as I thought that I would, because, like I said, it kind of eases you from the data pad aspect into the in-person, but it was still great having other people there. I probably wouldn't, because it is a lot. So it feels like I'm glad we saw it in this early edition. I'd be curious to see it later on. So it's hard for me to figure out like how long I'd want to wait to do it. Mm-hmm. But I think I would be open to doing it again, hopefully if it was the same story. I don't think that it would be a bad thing. Okay. But I would, of course, like to see it different elements and stuff like that. Like, I think they could do enough while keeping the same basic story to make it different for repeat guests.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people say it was like unlike anything they've ever done. It was incredible. It is a lot of money. And, I do think there's going to be a drop off in attendance at some point. You've got the rich people and then the super curious people. And the super curious people are eventually going to, have done it. So it'll be interesting to see how long it goes before they're like, okay, this is becoming a one-night adventure at a much more affordable rate. Like, I'd say 5 years or so.
I think that's kind of the going theory.
And frankly, that's the time where I'd be more interested, because for me, it's not about the role play. For me, I'm more interested in seeing the showmanship of it. And I'm like, I can probably do that in a day. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even necessarily need an overnight, sort of thing. So it'll be interesting. I don't know if I'll ever do it, to be honest. I have my reservations. My biggest frustration with it, and of course this is from somebody from the outside looking in and just hearsay, but everybody raves about the service. You were talking about the service of your waiter. All I keep hearing is this is above and beyond, like, this is Disney service, and that's what drives me crazy. I'm like, okay, this is the service that used to be everywhere at Walt Disney World, and now it's behind a massive paywall. And same with... this is what Star Wars Galaxy's Edge was supposed to be, and now it's behind a massive paywall. And that's my frustration with it more than anything. It's another case of having to pay extra for what used to be the norm. And that, I just personally, and I get it, like, it frustrates me to a point that I'm like, I'm not going to do it out of spite, because I don't want to reward you for being jerks in doing that. You know what I mean? And perhaps I'm missing out on experiences because of that, but I really have a hard time giving my money to people when they're purposefully doing that.
No, I understand that. And as far as the service thing, I mean, I think the service is great because you're actually spending time with these people. Like, I don't eat a bunch of table service, but when I do at Walt Disney World, like, I feel like the service is great too. Like, I guess I don't feel like there's much opportunity to have that, like, in the same way that you're going to have that. So of course, by spending 2 full days with the same group of people, you're going to be like, oh wow, that was really great. Whereas if you just ask a cast member a question as you're walking through Epcot, it's not going to be the same thing. And then as far as the Galaxy's Edge thing, totally agree that is what was 100% promised. And you can see the elements, just like Rise of the Resistance includes elements of all these different rides. You can see elements of all these past tests, like World Showcase Adventure, Sorcerer of the Magic Kingdom, especially Legends of Frontierland. You can see all of that in this. But I don't think that this type of story would have worked at Galaxy's Edge, especially not at Disneyland. Like I was talking about, guests taking things too far. if you had annual pass holders that were into it in Galaxy's Edge, the experience would be just inaccessible for any day guest. So having a constant turnover every 2 days, I think, is what's making this possible.
Excellent. Well, Kyle, I'm so happy that you had a great time. I know this was not something that you were planning to do. This was a friend that said, hey, we got it. Do you want to go, sort of thing. So it was kind of shocking when you were like, hey, Jeff, guess what? I'm going on the Halcyon. I was like, wait, what?
We had all talked about so much about what is this going to be like and how much is it going to change. And it was like, you know what? If we're going to see it in its early days and get to see what that's going to be like, even if it's a train wreck, let's do it. And I'd say my friends who were probably more skeptical than I, they came out rating it at a 7. My wife was a little bit higher, an 8 or a 9. No, not 9. She said 8. I said 7, cost included. So I think that's, pretty good for being adults in our 30s.
Yeah. The one thing I will say is I would buy into this if it were the right IP. I'm just not a big enough star. If it were Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, I know people think I'm joking when I say that, but if it were...
Jeff wants to go swim in the Cheerios.
Dude, if I could go swim in Cheerios, I would have done it by now. If it were the right IP, and let's face it, Star Wars is the right IP for a lot of people. I think if this is successful, obviously we're going to see a Marvel one, and I think it would be even bigger, personally. So... I don't know, it's interesting. But in any case, we could go on forever about this. I'm so happy you had a great time, but shall we get to some trivia?
Yes.
Do you know the answer? Get your brain gears churning and play along. It's trivia time.
Before we get to the trivia, Kyle, I want to take a moment to talk about souvenir scents. Now, Kyle, are you aware, I don't even know if you know this about me, that I am obsessed with scented candles. Did you know this?
I did know this about you, actually.
Okay, cool. Well, Souvenir Scents is creating handmade candles and melts to help bring your most cherished vacation memories into your home. Their unique scents are individually formulated by their own in-house scent creator to bring the most realistic representations to life, and you can find scents including Pirate Ride Water, we all love that, as well as numerous scents from Pandora. Plus, it doesn't stop with Disney. They have a bunch from Universal, including Halloween Horror Night scents, because I want me some year-round HHN in my house. And DCTC listeners can save 15% off of their order just by using code DCTC at checkout. So click on the Souvenir Scents link in this episode's description to check out their different candles and wax melts and use code DCTC at checkout. Now, Kyle, do you want to hit me with a trivia question first, or shall I hit you?
I think I will hit you.
Let's hear it.
All right, so while the Halcyon looks shiny and new when you get onto the ship, it's actually quite old. Do you know what anniversary it is celebrating at the time of the story?
The 1976th anniversary, because 1976, I believe, is when A New Hope came out?
No, you're way off. If this was Price is Right, you'd be way
over?
Yeah.
Is it the 100th?
More than that.
I don't know. What is it?
275th.
And what is it?
But it's been recently refurbished. I don't know.
I cannot believe that there isn't it's not a reference to something.
There might be something. I'm just not smart enough. I will say that for the data pad that I borrowed, the pin was 1138.
I was going to say it should have been the 1138th for THX 1138.
It's 275th, but it's been recently refurbished, and that's why it looks nice.
All right. Well, aboard the Halcyon, they have creative names for everyday appliances. Do you happen to remember the official names for the mini fridge and the hair blow dryer in your room?
I don't, but that's a good point that there is a mini fridge, which I didn't use, but that's one of my favorite.
Just in case you want to hoard food from the buffets.
I mean, you could so they have these cheesy waffle things that taste like Cheddar Bay biscuits, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, no, I don't remember.
Your mini fridge is labeled, and I mean, it's quite literally labeled as a cooling supply unit. Okay. And the hair blow dryer is called a thermal blower. So
makes sense.
Everything is in the world.
I do think my wife read the thing on the fridge now that you mention it, but I don't remember.
Excellent. Well, Kyle, I'm so happy that you had this adventure. Thank you for sharing it with me and for all the listeners. I'm sure you're, helping a lot of people make decisions here. So that's great. And I love that this was you paid for this, you did it. It's a legitimate review, shall we say. Of course, one man's opinion, but still a legitimate review.
I didn't write about it for Laughing Place, but I wrote about it for my personal finance site as if it was just a regular hotel. So people can check that out. It's moneyaT30.com.
30 spelled out or 30?
30.
Great. Money
like
at
the
30.
age I was when I started it.
Fantastic. Well, Kyle, thanks so much. And of course, we'll hear you again soon for the House of Mouse headlines.
All right.
Thanks for tuning into this episode. Don't miss any future episodes by subscribing and following Dizney with a Z, Coast to Coast, on your favorite podcast app. This episode has been executive produced by Robert Scontrino. Gain rewards like Robert, including access to never-before-heard episodes and live stream Q&As by visiting the Patreon link in this episode's description. And don't forget that I'll be matching 100% of your first month subscription to the charity Autism Speaks for all new patrons joining this month, April of 2022. And of course, you can learn more about the great work that Autism Speaks does by checking out their link in the show notes. Basically, anything you need can be found in this episode's description. From additional information and links discussed in this episode found in the show notes, to the DCTC hotline where you can leave a voicemail and be heard on a future episode, access to the show's official website, some free gifts from me to you, and so much more. So be sure to check out this episode's description. Other than that, folks, have a magical day. Bye!
Thanks for listening to Disney Coast to Coast. Have a magical day.
Disney Coast to Coast is produced and hosted by Jeff DePauli. Learn more about the podcast and become a supporter at DisneyCoastToCoast.com. This podcast is part of the DePodcast Network. Learn more about this show, plus find more quality and entertaining podcasts at DePodcastNetwork.com. That's DEPodcastNetwork.com.